your eligibility for short and long-term disability benefits and thoracic outlet syndrome. Let's first talk about the evaluation process used by disability carriers in thoracic outlet syndrome disability insurance claims. TOS is a group of disorders that occur when there is compression, injury, or irritation of the nerves and or the blood vessels in the low neck and upper chest area, which can cause neck pain, shoulder pain, arm pain, even numbness or impaired circulation of these affected areas. Now, the pain will typically increase when you raise the affected arm. You may have purchased a disability insurance policy through your employer or on your own to provide you with peace of mind, financial peace of mind, if you were to become disabled. A disability insurance company is not necessarily in the business of paying benefits for TOS, in part because they don't understand the different types of thoracic outlet syndrome disorders and the related symptoms. What I want you to know about the types of thoracic outlet syndromes is important because it'll help us develop your claim. There are 3 types of thoracic outlet syndrome disorders, and each presents with different symptoms. The neurogenic thoracic outlet syndrome is caused by an abnormality of the bony and the soft tissues in the low neck region and the cervical rib area that will compress and irritate the nerves of what's called the brachial plexus. Now, the brachial plexus is a complex of nerves that supply motion and feeling to the arm and the hand. The disabling symptoms that we want to see in your records will include weakness or numbness of the hand, decreased size of the hand, atrophy or loss of muscle, pain, tingling, numbness, and weakness of the neck, chest, and arms. The next is venous thoracic outlet syndrome, and is caused by damage to major veins in the lower neck and upper chest. It can cause swelling and pain in your hands, your fingers, and your arms. Now, that's important that we're developing the symptoms in your medical records. The third is arterial thoracic outlet syndrome, and it's caused by a bony congenital abnormality in the lower neck and upper chest. This causes cold sensitivity in your hands and fingers, numbness, pain, sores on the fingers, and poor blood circulation of your arms, hands, and fingers. We want to make sure that those symptoms are documented in your medical records. And this is important because carriers just don't understand the different types of thoracic outlet syndrome disorders or their symptoms. So I want your medical records to document the type of TOS you have, your unique and personal disabling symptoms, and how those symptoms impact your ability to function not only in the workplace but at home. Now, once you file your claim, the carrier has an evaluation process, and I want to explore that so that you understand it. The first question they're going to ask is there any objective medical evidence that's the basis of the TOS diagnosis? Many disability policies require objective medical evidence of the diagnosis. That means that they're going to want to see x-rays, MRIs, CT scans, EMG and nerve conduction study tests, vascular studies, arteriograms, and blood tests. It's also crucial that you get your diagnosis from a neurologist, a vascular surgeon, a pain management provider, or a physical medicine provider, and that you give an accurate history of your symptoms at each visit. These symptoms can include a number of things, and I'll mention them again. We want to document any limited range of motion, particularly with motion of your shoulder upwards, and then pain with the upward shoulder motion. We also want to document any tingling and numbness in your arms, into your forearm, and your hands. We want to document swelling. We want to document all of these symptoms because the carrier is going to be looking at your records to see the history of your symptoms, the diagnostic findings, and the examination findings. We want to make sure that it's consistent with a diagnosis of TOS. The second thing carriers do is look for objective basis of the restrictions and limitations assigned by your physician. Now, your physician is going to be asked to complete attending physician statement forms, APS forms. These forms do not ask the right questions about your restrictions and limitations. There isn't a uniform APS form, but I have read many of them, and I know that it's basically a generic form. It's not one designed to elicit your particular problems. But the form is designed so your doctor says you can do sedentary work. Why? Well, because if you can do sedentary work, you may not be disabled under the terms of your policy. The APS form is going to ask your physician to explain the objective medical evidence that supports the restrictions and limitations. And that can be tough because you may have good days or bad days. I supplement that APS form with a Social Security Disability Residual Functional Capacity form for upper extremity disorders. I want the right questions to be asked and the right questions to be answered. Now, you can help your doctor answer this form by giving a good interval history about what your symptoms and your functionality are between visits. The third thing the carrier is going to say is there a causal relationship between this diagnosis and the restrictions and limitations and your inability to do your own or any occupation? Now, if you haven't gotten it, the key to getting your benefits is that APS form or the Social Security Residual Functional Capacity form. Remember, I want you to use both because I want the objective basis of the diagnosis and the restrictions and limitations questions asked properly so that your physician can answer the right questions about the diagnosis, your symptoms, and your functionality. Now, the carrier is going to have their medical unit, I call them the liar for hires, review your file and the APS form to determine your real restrictions and limitations. They don't have to accept what your physician has to say. The disability carrier will have that liar for hire medical gun say, there's no objective basis for the restrictions and limitations assigned by your physician. Or they may even disagree with the diagnosis. They may look to your APS form and say you're doing stuff that can't possibly be done if you have TOS. The fourth thing the carrier is going to look at is treatment. There are different treatment modalities depending on the type of TOS you have. So if you have neurogenic TOS, you'll have physical therapy, medication, and surgery. If you have venous TOS, you're going to be taking anti-clotting medication to reduce blood clots and medication that will decrease your body's ability to clot. And you may also need to have surgery. Arterial TOS is also treated with that thrombolytic medication and surgery. But regardless of what you've got, the carrier is going to review your medical records to see what treatment plan your doctor recommended and your compliance with that program, and of course your response to treatment. Now look, the carrier can't make you undergo surgery, but they will expect that you have the surgery. And if you can't have the surgery or don't want to have the surgery, then we want to have that documented in your file. The carrier is next going to send, in terms of their analysis, to their vocational counselor. And the VE is going to determine what your occupation was at the time you became disabled, the physical duties of your occupation, and based on what their doctor has to say, whether you can perform those occupational duties. Now, if I have to file an appeal, you can be sure that I'm going to be arguing that they improperly disregarded your doctor's opinions and that their doctor's opinions are cherry-picked. And there's some other things I'm going to argue. Now, if as part of this analysis, the VE is going to determine what your occupation is. The carrier may provide that the carrier can determine your occupation based on how the Dictionary of Occupational Titles describes these occupational duties, and not how you perform it for your specific employer. You need to understand that before you stop working and apply for benefits, because we want to understand what the definition of occupation is. And I'll tell you, many times the carrier gets that occupation wrong. Now, after a period of time, normally the standard of disability changes from an inability to do your own occupation to an inability to do any occupation. And at that point, the carrier is going to reevaluate your restrictions and limitations and then send it to their VE to determine if there are any other occupations you can perform which pay similar wages. Now, this is not a real-world test. Often the carrier is going to determine that you can do a sedentary job, sitting here at a desk, just to deny your benefits. Now, at step 6 of this analysis, they're going to be looking at your activities of daily living form and ask, is that consistent with what your medical records say or what you told the adjuster during a phone call? They're in the business of collecting premium dollars and not paying benefits. They're going to look at what you say you can do on your activity of daily living form, and then they're going to compare that to what's in the medical records. Don't be surprised if they call on a regular basis to check up on you. They may even put surveillance on you. What does the policy language say about how long the carrier has to pay your benefits? Now, some policies will limit how long a disability carrier has to pay a shoulder claim. They'll use a clause called the subjective condition clause that will legally limit their obligation to pay. There is a subjective condition limitation that may say that a medical condition that's characterized by pain, tingling, or numbness is limited to just 2 years. And the carrier is going to be looking for a clause in your policy to limit how long they have to pay your disability insurance benefits. I hope you now understand how disability carriers go about analyzing a TOS claim. As I've said, it's important that you have an accurate diagnosis explained by the diagnostic studies, that your doctor explains the objective basis of the restrictions and limitations that have been assigned, that you understand the definition of occupation in your policy, you understand what medical treatment is required, and that you anticipate that there's going to be a change in the definition of disability so that when that happens, you're actually prepared. It may be necessary at some point for you to hire a vocational evaluator to evaluate your capabilities, or it may be necessary to have a vocational evaluator discuss what your jobs are or your occupation or transferable skills, and most likely that's going to come about when the carrier denies or terminates your claim. If you have any questions, call me at 727-894-3188 for a complimentary consultation.